speaking in an American context, where do you see dead orthodoxy in current Christian culture, Ryan?
Yeah. So, man, this goes back for me at least 10 or 11 years. When I first started ministry, I was doing a lot of ministry in jails, in prisons, and then in the open air. And what I noticed really quickly was that when you start doing open air ministry, your biggest critic is usually other Christians. I mean,
That's
those are the
true.
people by and large that come after you. And that really kind of sparked at least the question, why is that the case? So, you go out and preach, and granted, you get loud, mouthy liberals and atheists and things like that. But, for the most part, even unbelievers recognize, hey, I mean, this is what you believe. Yeah, I understand that you would come out and preach it. Christians from day one, in my experience, have been the ones that have come out and said, well, wait a minute, why are you out here? Why, you're gonna turn people away from the faith. You're gonna make an embarrassment of the cross. And so it goes back at least 12 years for me, just encountering a lot of those issues as far as how people are responding to open air preaching. But then if you extend that at large, you find that it's not just open air preaching. This is true. Let's say any cause for the gospel or for the church that exits the four walls of the church. By and large, you're going to have a lot of resistance and pushback from the Christian community. And to me, that is a staple of dead orthodoxy. So they, by and large, so you have Christians, they say, hey, this is my theology. They can have correct theology. And this is not just, by the way, like Crew, some of these, like the BSM campus ministries, things like that. I'm talking about very confessional, theologically orthodox Christians in the Reformed world who would also look at a lot of that activity outside the four walls of the church, and they scoff at it. And they everybody's different as far as motives go, but it seems like there's an embarrassment a lot of times regarding that. And I'm not talking, I do want to clarify, I'm not talking about going around and acting just over the top obnoxious, going around and blasting a bullhorn in a restaurant or something like that. We're talking about just genuine Bible preaching or witness outside the walls of the church regarding whether it's direct evangelism ministry kind of thing, or whether it's we've done a lot of abortion ministry, abortion work, and that includes trying to pass certain laws and things like that. And by and large, man, the Christian community seems to be embarrassed by that. And so I still think that certainly in the atmosphere, and that's true again, as far as even Orthodox Christianity, Reformed Presbyterian Christianity, Reformed Baptist Christianity, doesn't matter what spectrum you're talking about. There is, in my mind, as far as what I've experienced and seen and encountered, there's certainly an element of embarrassment and pushback against anything like that.
Is there anything changing with that? I mean, so we've had, there's sort of this, I don't know if you've heard that phrase, vibe shift, but sort of the whole, the fact that, you've got people like Joe Rogan, who's no real Christian.
Jordan Peterson even,
Jordan Peterson, but others saying we kind of got to go back to whatever we were doing before. We need to go, church, religion, whatever works, but something like that. And the leftists are crazy people. And so, even, what's the atheist, Richard Dawkins is like, I like cathedrals and, like Christmas carols and, the intellectual schizophrenia is mind-boggling, but nevertheless, there's sort of this shift saying but we need Christianity. Is that affecting this at all?
Yeah, in my experience, yeah. Russell Brand, Tucker Carlson, a few more.
Yeah, there you go.
And not only that, I'll give you an example from just open air preaching. When I first started open air preaching about 12 years ago, it was very taboo and very fringe. Whereas now I do see more Presbyterians and Reformed Baptists doing it, and it's more widely accepted, and it's more widely available as an option as far as ministry goes. So to your point, and not only that, when I go out and I'm engaging people in the public square with the gospel, I've over the last probably post COVID, I have certainly seen a shift as far as even the unbelieving population recognizing they're showing interest. It's not to say that they're all being converted, but they certainly
Sure.
recognize, you know what, this is more attractive, at least on a nominal front, at least on a superficial front, than it was, let's say, 10 years ago, as far as the population and the culture goes, in my experience.
What about topics? So you're talking about being outside the
Yeah.
church, which is one kind of like push the limit. We're going to go out and we're going to preach. But what about like, I don't even know what you hit. I mean, in terms of your open air preaching or your evangelism, but what about applying the gospel to Tucker Carlson or Elon Musk or, whatever is going on, what Trump is saying or doing, or sexuality? I mean, you mentioned abortion a minute ago, but do you get a lot of pushback on the topics? Like, hey, just the gospel, man, just Jesus and the cross and the resurrection. Don't talk about economics. Don't talk about cultural issues. Do you get pushback there? And is that also a sign of our dead orthodoxy?
I have gotten pushback on that, and especially so, like you mentioned. So when we go out, we are, I try to be up to date as far as what's going on in the culture and things like that. And if I'm not up to date, the students are going to bring that up, and so you need to be able to respond, I think, intellectually and properly to those students regarding those topics. And again, the only pushback I ever receive on that are from other Christians, and so they look at that and they say, well, that's not the gospel. And okay, granted, we always point people to Christ, and that's the goal for sure. But whenever somebody brings up some issue that is very relevant as far as the gospel goes, let's say like abortion, let's say like LGBTQIA, whatever, let's say like the political climate and the presidential nomination and who should we vote for, that kind of thing. These are all gospel-centered issues as far as how we approach those things. The gospel should be applied to all of those topics. Whenever you enter into the public square, certainly I've received pushback from certainly other organizations that are saying, and in fact, we had a guy at our, so he goes to our church, and I'm a lot of these guys that go to our some of our church plants, we meet through open air preaching and evangelism. And so the guy encountered another group that said, hey, well, all I hear Ryan talking about is politics, whereas we focus more on the gospel. And if you went out and listened to me, let's say for a 3-hour afternoon, and listened to what I was saying, not even half of that is going to be centered on the cultural issues of the day. But certainly a lot of it is, because I do want to bring the gospel to bear on those things. And so, yeah, it's still, but that goes back to some of and this is part of the rub here, because when it comes to dead orthodoxy, it's always about balance in my experience. I mean, it's so easy to go from one extreme to the other. And one of the things that I do, I guess, see is in the church at large is, like for instance, on X, you get on there and pietism is a really dirty word. And I agree, pietism is, but piety is not. Piety of life, that means something else than pietism. And so I think this is kind of where within the Reformed camp, part of the book addresses the idea of you can have a correct theology, but a wrong heart. And so whether that is, okay, I expect this person, whenever they get outside the four walls of the church, to only talk about the cross. But then on the other hand, you see the extremes of saying, okay, outside of the four walls of the church, or even within let's put it that way, even within the church, all we can talk about are politics and cultural issues. And for me, it's all about balance. And so you can have correct theology with the wrong heart. And so whether it is the, for instance, if you go out and you're talking to people that are pro-abortion, and you're bringing the gospel to bear on that, and you're explaining, hey, why that is wrong and against God's law and all of these other things, I can have that same conversation in two different ways. So it's really about the approach that we have when it comes to those conversations, and then the balance, I think. So if I go out and all I'm talking about is politics, well, yeah, I understand. There's room for criticism. Or if I go out and I never bring up politics, there's room for criticism. And that's true outside of the church and within the church. And I think if you're on one of those extremes, then I think that would be a sign that, yeah, your orthodoxy is needs to be addressed in some way.
Okay, so I just have to say this, just so you know, you lost me as soon as you start saying words that I know come from the Gospel Coalition and T4G, which are like balance. When you start saying stuff like balance, I just tune all the way out. It's like, is he from the?
He was about to say nuance too. I think it's a very nuanced thing.
You know, and it's really interesting. I think we've been people who have led us for so long, led us such a wrong path. A lot of this that issues that we should be orthodox about and care about and engage with, when we hear things like balance has been used as a way to keep us from engaging with them. So it just throws me off. It's balance like,
yeah. So let me, because I think that's right, but that's a good example of kind of, I got the word more from Martin Lloyd-Jones, certainly than, I don't know.
That's a cheat code.
That's
a cheat code.
You know, in all honesty, man, Martin Lloyd-Jones. But here's, and that, to your point though, I think that's what happens. So for instance, like the gospel-centered movement really has hampered the word gospel now, unfortunately. So now if you speak about the gospel, it's like, oh, you're one of those guys, you know, or if you bring up, hey, balance is actually to me, it's a biblical thing. At the very least, I think we can all admit there are extremes that are dangerous, so they're good when they're balanced, but then you go to an extreme that has been unfortunately tarnished by some of these other organizations that have certainly hampered how we view those words. And so what I think is we need to at least pause and step back. And I guess it's just like anything else, reclaim those words and actually apply them and use them in the right framework and in the right biblical understanding of the word balance or gospel or any of these other words that have been unfortunately tampered with. And including, by the way, I'd throw another one out there, cessationism. That's to me, when I hear the word cessationism, when you talk to people about cessationism, most of the time they think of this dry, lifeless, arid, Holy Spirit quenching kind of theology, when in reality, it can be a good thing. So that's just another example.
Well, the way that a lot of people like to think of the Spirit, I like the way that sensationalism comes through and kind of shuts everything off for a minute. At least the conversation does, until we figure it out. It's kind of like the border in one sense. It's like we got all sorts of stuff pouring in from the border, and there's no border at all. And so when you're like, I don't want to quench the Spirit, hear me on this. But at some point,
you just want to quench the border.
What I want to do is get some order.
Yeah.
See, I'm a poet and didn't know it.
Yeah.
And so like there's a balance.
Oh, you did it.
We got to find another word. But there is this reality where it's like coming from a charismatic background where everything was a spirit and everything was operating. I understand where some of the sensationalist guys come from. Was like, can we just stop for a minute and figure out what we're talking about when we talk about how the Spirit works, how it's supposed to operate? And so sometimes I'm fine with a cold cut in order to be able to figure things out and operate.